Hey Snackers, this is Kareem Iskander. I'm a lead technical advocate with Cisco Learning and Certifications.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt DiNapoli. I'm a manager of developer advocacy with Cisco Developer Relations.
Welcome to episode 79 of Snack Minute.
Snack Minutes is your weekly 10-minute bite of learning covering tech, coding, and some cool projects that we like to work on.
And the cool thing that we're going to talk to you about today is Netbox with my colleague, Palmer Sample. Do you mind introducing yourself, Palmer?
Hey, Kareem. My name is Palmer Sample. I'm a developer advocate with Cisco Learning and Certifications, specifically Cisco Training Boot Camps. So really my role is to help guide people through the process of learning how to automate networks and really learn more technologies and kind of see how they can adopt automation to their daily workflow as network engineers. One thing that we've had a lot of requests about is sources of truth. You know, we try to maintain IP addresses and spreadsheets, Excel, you name it. I've tried it. What happens is a year down the road, you go to find that IP address, it's not allocated, or it says it's allocated, it's not there. We just don't keep up with things like that. And also inventory management. So one of the things I want to talk about is something called Netbox. And I want to show you a little bit about how we can use this as what's called a source of truth and how that can actually drive our network automation.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Yeah.
So what are we going to do?
Well, I figured that we could talk a little bit about webhooks and how they can help us with configuring our devices, and how a source of truth can actually give us the ability to manage networks without ever actually interacting with the command line interface. And of course, this is one of the things that everyone aspires to, right? Is how can I use automation but make sure that any changes only come from one place? And that's a challenge, because you make a change on a device, someone comes behind you, they make a change to an interface, they shut something down. Yeah. Oh, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary fix, right? So we're going to talk about how we can avoid that.
Well, you should fire them if they come in after you've made your changes and make their own changes. I just had a funny idea that we should make a t-shirt, Kareem, that says, no more CLI, and it has a circle around it with a line through it. I think that would be an awesome t-shirt for Snack Minutes.
Totally. Let's do it.
Hey, let's do it.
Sorry, Palmer. Go ahead. Yeah, let's do it.
So one of the challenges that we have, the first thing I brought up was IP address management. And that's kind of a buzzword now. Everyone's heard of IPAM. And as far as sources of truth, what is a source of truth? Is Excel spreadsheet a source of truth? Sure. Is it always accurate? Maybe. Can you pull information out of it programmatically using an API? Maybe. I've never tried to automate Excel.
Kinda.
Yeah. Or if you're into pain and suffering.
Done.
Yeah. Do you know Visual Basic?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I try to avoid that. Just because I haven't used Basic and I don't even know how long. So, one of the things that's important to me is RESTful APIs. And I want to be able to get data out in a structured manner. Personally, I don't know about you all. I really like JSON. I try to avoid XML. It scares me a little bit just because it's a lot of text and it's a lot of parsing and there's really no structure. I mean, I'm sure there's structure, but to me, it's a little bit more difficult. So I try to stick with, JSON for the most part.
It's all about JSON.
We are JSON fans here at Snack Minutes.
All right. Well, the nice thing is, it's just key value pairs, or you can model any kind of data structures. We can get dictionaries, we can get lists, we can translate that directly into Python. And of course, a lot of the automation, we stick with Python a lot, and you hear this a lot. Well, what's the best language to learn? And a lot of people will say Python. And for me, I like Python just because it's a little bit more of a natural language. I mean, it's certainly, maybe not as performant as C, or certainly not assembler, but it's a little bit easier to read. Yeah, there might be some nuances like indentation, things like that. But if I'm using Python, there are so many built-in libraries to interact with the devices and also to parse that JSON that almost everything I want to do is already done for me. I just have to take the pieces and put them together. And whether that means just browsing the internet, looking through other people's code, almost anything you want to do, you can do. And it's probably just taking pieces from other parts or finding examples and tailoring that to your use case.
Yeah, I find myself on Stack Overflow all the time for some reason.
for some reason, because it has all the answers, Cream.
Exactly.
You said assembler, Palmer,
Right.
and I thought you're a mutex.
I'm looking at your screen, and the first thing that jumps out is your debugger or your Python console right there. Looks like Flask. Is that right?
It is. And Flask
Yes.
is a web framework that we can use. Exactly. And we're going to use Flask to act almost like a web server. And what we're going to do is we're going to take in data from something called a webhook. And then based on that data, we're going to do some action. So we can think of this as like, event driven automation. So are you familiar with webhooks, Kareem?
Yeah, of course. They're kind of like the opposite of an API call.
Right. It's like the API is coming to us. We don't actually have to look for the
Exactly.
data. It's just going to get sent to us. And so one of the things that I thought I'd do is kind of show you what we can expect from a webhook before we actually get into what we can do with a webhook. Because I know I get this question a lot. What is a webhook? Well, you hear all these terms, JSON, REST APIs, webhooks. So I think it's also kind of important to gain that common language to know what we're talking about and what we're kind of expecting. One thing that we can use is a program called Netcat. And this is actually just going to set up a listener on some port. I'm calling it 19703. That was a port that I was assigned on a web server back in university. I don't know why. I just remember that port. It's not going to conflict with anything. And over here in
Did you go to
Netbox,
university in 1973? Is that what?
1973?
No, that was actually that was my pod. It was like tuco.cs.indiana.edu ports 19703. So let's take a look here. I mentioned webhooks. Now, one of the nice things about Netbox is it has this capability built in. And I've got a few webhooks that I've created. And this Netbox instance, I've had it up for a while now, so it probably has a lot of crazy data in there, but we do have a couple of devices that are important. I've got some Catalyst Edge 8000Vs running, and we're going to use those as our test bed for automation. But first, let's take a look here. I've got this webhook I created called IP address update. And we can see that it's tied to IP addresses. The webhook is enabled, and it's going to trigger whenever we create, update, or delete an IP address. And it's going to send an HTTP post to this URL. There's my port 19703. This is my local laptop. And it's actually going to post to this path, API update address. So I've got my listener on 19703. I'm going to go over here to our IPAM component in Netbox. And this is one thing I really like is, you can see I've only got 5 IPs here. This is obviously for a lab environment, but you can imagine with an organization, you could have, your entire address space modeled in here. So it's going to be easier for you to keep track of, but I'm going to add a new IP address just so we can see what happens. What's a webhook? What's it going to do? So I'm going to just make up some address. Sure, that looks good. I'm not going to assign it to anything.
Yeah, while you're filling that out, Palmer, I feel compelled to note that URL that you had shown that the webhook will be sending to, that's an implementation decision on your side for whatever this receiving application is on 19703 for that endpoint to be pushed to. So it's not something that Netbox is necessarily dictating, correct? It's something that you've decided, hey, my receiving application is going to receive at this URL.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. And this could be my local development machine. It could be a container. It could be a machine running in the cloud. It could be anywhere. So yes, that is something that we actually define the target and also the path. That /API update address. That could be anything we want.
/update. Right.
Well, as you're filling this out, Palmer, I want to point out something to our snackers, something that I found very useful as I'm testing out webhooks is look into a tool called ngrok, which allows you to essentially have a publicly accessible endpoint for you to point your webhook to so you can receive it on your local machine. I think it's really useful.
It has been, for sure. I agree with you on that one, Kareem.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've used that for development quite a few times. I've just created a generic IP address. I haven't assigned it to any kind of region, group, device, and anything like that. I just want to see, is this webhook going to work? Will I get data? And if I do, what is it? Let's see. So if I create this IP address, wait, what happened in the terminal? Oh,
You've received an event.
hey, look at this.
Here it is.
I got a post. Okay, there's my path. Okay. Oh, it's JSON. Okay, hey, cool. It's JSON. I know we can now do something with this. So look, we've got all of the data we need. We've got it's a create event. We've got the address information here, that 222.113. We've got all kinds of data. Now, this is not formatted, in any special way on my monitors because I'm taking raw data. So first, let's take a look at our Catalyst 8000 Vs. So I've only got a couple of interfaces here. Let's just take a look at okay, we've got our management interface, and 2 and 3 are unassigned and down. And there is no description assigned to them. Okay. And on our access router 02, there's nothing here. Okay, so we don't have descriptions. Nothing has been assigned, and the interfaces are down. Well, let's see what we can do. Is there anything that we can fix here? If we go here, we've got a Flask app. Flask again it's basically a web server, but I can create how I want to handle incoming requests like webhooks. So you can see I've created this function called manage IP address. But above that, I've got this little @ symbol and some words, netbox ipam.route. And what this is called a decorator. And essentially what a decorator in Python is, it's a wrapper function. So this manage IP address is going to get wrapped through an internal Flask function. And it's going to look for this path /API/update-address. And I tell it that I'm going to allow a post. Now, I just saw in Netbox, I'm expecting a post to come through to this API endpoint. And when I get that data, okay, there's this special variable called request. And that's actually going to give us the payload from the incoming webhook. So I just got some information out of it, the IP address, the address family, because I might want to do something different if it's IPv4 versus v6. I look to see if we have an assigned interface for that IP address. If so, then I use this. I use something called PyNetbox, which is a Python Netbox API or SDK. It allows me to just easily, tie into Netbox and pull data out, or get information that's sent to me. So we're going to go through. Oh, and I did tell it. I had to put in the safeguard because I broke my lab a few times. Yeah, if it's the management interface, don't shut it down or change the IP, because that just kind of makes for a headache on my side while I'm developing. So I just created some different. Remember that first thing I showed there was event. Look, if the event is deleted, well, we got rid of the IP address. We should probably unconfigure it from the interface that it's assigned to. Or if it was created, then let's configure the IP address. Now, these are functions that I created in a separate file, and we can look at that if you'd like to, but I'd really like to get into the demo and show what we can do with this.
Yeah,
that's okay. I think we can all ascertain what that black box looks like. So go ahead and show us what the update looks like when that happens.
All right, so let's start our Flask. Let's make sure. Okay. All right, so I can see right here, I'm listening on port 19703. Wait, I don't know if you can read that. Hopefully you can.
Yep.
All right. Now, we did see we do not have any IP addresses. We don't have any interface descriptions. And for a change of pace, my development virtual routers that I've had up for ages, I don't even know what version they're running. They're still online, so that's good. So I actually have this link, the Gigabit 2 on each one of these the Cat 8000 Vs. There's a connection between Gig 2. So if I put them in the same network, I should have reachability. And I do have a prefix that I created for that. So let's add an IP address. Let's say 172. Oh, look, there they are, 16.1.5. Okay, I'm not gonna worry about VRF's DNS names, but I am going to assign it to an interface. Let's put it on access router 1, interface gig 2. Okay, so when I hit create, then I'm expecting something to happen over here in the PyCharm window and something to happen on the device. If my code works.
Fingers crossed.
That's a big if.
Demo gods.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking good so far.
Well, let's take a look what we got here. Right now, I also put a lot of print statements so we can see what's happening, but it's assigning this address to interface gigabit Ethernet 2 on access router 1. Here's our payload that we send. Now, this is based on Yang models, and we can locate this information through a variety of tools, which we can discuss at some other time.
So curious, what are you using to write to the device? What are you using as a southbound API to the device? RESTconf?
Yeah, RESTconf, yes. I like netconf because of some of the capabilities that it gives us, but for ease of use, and once again, sticking with that whole JSON concept, RESTconf is going to be the way to go, and it's quick to develop. So we're actually just using the Python requests library to send, in this case, I believe it's a put to a RESTconf API endpoint. And you can see the URL here. So it's going out to the router, RESTconf. We're using the iOS XE native model, and it's setting the primary IP address. So this is going to be IPv4. So now if we take a look, we've got configured programmatically. We have all these syslog messages. There we go. We've got that 16.1.5. Now notice our interface is still down, but that's okay. We can fix that in a minute. Let's assign the other side IP address. Oh, you know what? I think that I wanted to put 1.5 on the other device. Let's change that. Let's go down here. Let's take it off of router 1. Kareem?
I think Snackers, while Palmer does this, what essentially is happening here is we have the single source of truth. Palmer has a middleware that's running on Flask and receiving these webhooks in Flask with the data as a JSON, and then he's going to the devices themselves to essentially do a put or update via RESTconf the device configuration following that single source of truth. And there's multiple ways to do this, but the idea here is that you have a single source of truth. I know you can leverage Cisco DNA Center with Netbox integration for DNAC to basically follow the changes that happens and pushes the configuration changes to your devices that it manages. So you can do this multiple ways, but you can see how simple it is, Matt, to do all of this programmatically when you have the right tools.
Right. Well, Netbox is giving us that opportunity to take advantage of webhooks so that being that single source of truth is really the easiest part of this and what it's given to us. We might have to do a little bit of coding in between and provide a middleware layer like this, but I mean, you would have to do that in any way that you would do this implementation. It's just a matter of taking this out of something like a spreadsheet and putting it into something that's a little more dynamic and offers opportunity for us to do this automation.
Right. So Palmer, I know we're running a little bit over here, and I apologize. Maybe we'll have you back to further dig into the code and maybe do some more with Netbox. But I wanted to ask you, for everything that you showed us here, do we have somewhere for our snackers to go out, get the code, and implement or test this out on our side?
Yes, absolutely. This is in a Cisco Learning GitHub repo, and the link is going to be posted in the show notes. So the code is going to be there for you to be able to pull down, look at, modify, play with, do whatever you'd like. And I welcome you to reach out to me directly if you have any questions. No problem. Always happy to help, get people on that automation, on the automation path.
Hey, Kareem, this is Palmer's first time here, so we got to ask him the question.
Yes, go for it, Matt. You do it.
All right, Palmer, we ask this of every first-time guest. What superpower would you have and why?
Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot for the heads up on this one.
Yeah, anytime.
Hey, is there a superpower for, like sleeping, because I can, You know,
There you go.
when you have dogs and cats and they all whistle and bark and everything, it just makes for a long night. So yeah, if I had a superpower, I'd be able to avoid hearing the dog whistles.
Palmer, thank you so much for showing us this and getting an introduction. I think we can definitely dive a little bit deeper in a future episode. Snackers, thank you so much for joining us again on yet another episode of Snack Minutes, and catch us next time where we'll talk about yet another cool thing.
Thank you, Snackers. Thanks, Palmer.
Right. Thanks for having me.